Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Extend Your Identity Investment with Access Request. I'm Shay Mann and I will be your moderator. Today's webinar is in listen-only mode, so if you have any questions throughout the event, go ahead and submit those in the Q&A panel and we'll answer them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. This session will be recorded and we'll email you a link to the recorded version tomorrow. Joining us today is Senior Product Marketing Manager Jennifer Glenn and Senior Manager of Product Management, Amar Rama. Jen will kick us off, and we'll wrap up with a quick demo from Amar. And with that, Jennifer, I'll pass it over to you to get us started.
All right, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the webcast. So we're going to just really quick go through an agenda just to make sure you know that you're on the right webcast. So really, we're going to just start off with a quick journey, quick talk about the identity governance journey, really what it's all about. That way we can set up what these gaps are that are left over by unmanaged access requests. Then we'll introduce our access request service, which is the new service capability that we have launched for Identity Now. And then Amar's going to finish us off with a roadmap and a demonstration to really show you how this works. So with that, as many of you are familiar, you know the value of identity governance. It's really about visibility, it's about control, it's knowing who is accessing your corporate resources, and then really controlling what they can do with that access and what they can access. And I feel like it seems really easy when I put it that way, but as you are no doubt aware, that's an extreme oversimplification of what this whole program is really all about. It's really time-consuming. It's really complex. Yeah, again, the picture on the slide, 4 pieces, it seems very simple, but as you all know, it's not. And every identity program is different. And, it's based on the priorities of your company. It's based on the maturity of your company. It's based on the budget, the resources, and where you can execute. But the great thing about identity governance and the solutions within this market are really that, you can start anywhere. And eventually this process all leads you to the visibility and control that you need for security and compliance, and really for your sanity, for that ability to control and automate things and make your life much more efficient. So why is it so challenging for organizations to understand who has access to what within the business and what they can do with it? A recent Market Pulse survey showed that 67% of the respondents were not actually able to pull together a report very quickly of who has access in their business to different resources and what they can do with it. And I have to admit, I was actually very surprised by that number. I think some of it is telling that what is interesting about this now is that so many organizations are actually realizing how complex this problem is. So that is a point. I think if maybe we'd asked this question a few years ago, the answer probably would have been different. A lot of people would very honestly answer, well, of course, we can pull together this list of access and do it. And maybe once they got started, they would realize the complexity and the challenge of doing this task. So I think it's a good step that now 67% of these companies are aware of, just how challenging it is to timely pull together this access information. But it's still, it's a big number for not being able to understand the access in your organization. So let's look at why. Why is this so hard? Identity management isn't a new problem. It's not even a new technology solution. Provisioning and password solutions have been around for years, and there are any number of factors that make it difficult to know who should have access to resources or what they can do. Remote workforces or contractors, integrated partnerships, things like that. So many things that makes it really challenging to know who's accessing what and when. But for the purposes of this webcast, we're actually going to narrow our focus and really talk about how you control granting access to these corporate resources. That way we can, keep this webinar down to just, 40 minutes and not 3 hours. So as I mentioned, provisioning has been around for a while, and even at SailPoint, this is something that we've been working on for years. And again, while nothing in identity management can ever be considered easy, the value of provisioning has been pretty well understood for some time. For every user, there are several concrete events that occur throughout their life with that company. They join, they might get promoted, and they leave. These are concrete planned events. Again, not easy because of the number of systems and the number of roles and things that may exist, but again, there's something that can be planned for, and therefore maybe a little bit easier to provide some automation for create policies on a broader scale. But the challenge is that companies are made up of people, of human beings, and the most challenging, and really these are the most challenging things to control. People always want more. They want more stuff. They want new applications, but you can't just roll them out to everyone, right? Not all at once. You have to try it out. Say, for example, marketing has a new analysis tool that they want to use to help report the number of visits to their website or how relevant a particular white paper is. And because apps like these are expensive, and they often, you want to roll it out to a few users just to try it out to see if it's going to be valuable or worth your time. How does IT really control access to this? This is really a challenge. Maybe you have an engineer that is incredibly talented in writing and has some extra time, so they're tasked to help out on a product team writing manuals for a short-term, 3-month, 6-month project. Again, it's a really small-term role. Maybe your CRM system has introduced some new features that make it really valuable for product managers to use, something that they haven't traditionally used in the past. Or maybe your company has restructured and your sales ops department has now moved from sales into marketing. Now, again, how do you make that change on a broad but somewhat narrow scale? And these things happen all the time. Organizations restructure, they grow, they try to shrink their expenses as much as they can. And again, it all comes down to people. People always want more skills, more applications, more information to do their job smarter. And modern computing has made it significantly easier for users to simply go and get whatever it is that they need, making the job of controlling access to those business resources even more challenging. And right now, most organizations are approaching these sort of unplanned access requests in one of two ways. They may implement a policy that basically says, sure, you make the request through IT and we'll just approve everything. And while this certainly cuts down on the resources and time that IT is needed to make those decisions, it really can be a little bit lax in terms of security. Or perhaps they swing into the other direction and everything is reviewed manually, it must be approved before any user gets access. And while at its face this is an extremely secure approach, it's not very scalable. And it causes a lot of time delays and users getting access to what they need. And as we stated before, people in an organization are like a river moving around a stone, right? They're going to find a way around and to get what they need. Creating a pretty gaping hole in your security strategy. So you can see there's a clear tension here between security and productivity in an organization. So what's even more challenging about this is the hole that's left by these access requests, that hole that we talked about, that gap, is that the risk itself is variable. You never actually know what that risk can pose to you. I mean, for example, lost productivity for your IT, who may be spending a lot of time on compliance projects versus other projects, or focused on tactical task lists instead of focusing on strategic IT initiatives. That may be a challenge, but it's not necessarily a huge risk, right? Whereas when you start thinking about doing everything manually and having these time delays, it introduces human error. It introduces this challenge of over-provisioning, which can cause you to have extra licenses, extra cost in licenses that you may not need. And also, that the laissez-faire approach that we talked about, where basically organizations are just giving access to everything, can cause a real challenge in the regulatory controls. And again, going back to that 67%, causing this problem of understanding really who in your organization who has access to what and what they can do with it. And then it goes all the way into the risk of security. That over-provisioning, that ability to just give everybody access to everything because it's easier, really causes a challenge or a risk of insider misuse, where maybe users aren't intending to do things that they're not supposed to do, but now they have access to things that they shouldn't have access to. They can do things within an application that maybe they're not even supposed to be doing. It also, that time delay that we talked about with that, overly controlled environment, overly controlled approach, really actually can put a strain on your security because, at its face, again, it's very secure to have IT approve everything, but you cause a time delay, people are going to move around that roadblock, and you're set up for shadow IT, users downloading things or using things that are well outside the purview of what IT can control. So now let's introduce Access Request from Identity Now. Identity Now Access Request was a service that we introduced earlier this year. It's the newest capability within the Identity Now portfolio. And basically what it is, it's a self-service platform that allows IT to set the policies for users to go in and access requests to the applications, the systems that they need, with a well-defined policy that basically grants them or denies access based on that policy. It also extends the ability to grant or approve that policy to outside of IT. You can basically now extend that approval process to the business owner versus just in IT. And that business owner may have a much closer relationship with that application or system, so they have a much better idea of who should have access and what they can do with that access, which actually helps with the limiting over provisioning. And really what that does is it allows your security team, your IT operations team, to better service the needs of your business. They can keep pace with what users are doing and what they need. And for users, it's really giving them faster access to whatever it is they need to do their job. At the end of the day, what we really say about these capabilities is that we're allowing your organization to get back to what it is they do best, and that's focusing on your business, not focused on the product or these manual tasks. So some of the key benefits of access requests of our specific service, again, I mentioned limiting over provisioning, which we talked about has some implications in terms of licensing, but it also has that challenge of insider risk. So limiting over provisioning is a really key benefit. Decreasing these time delays, decreasing the amount of time it takes for a user to get access to what it is that they need, is what is a really strong component in taking control of shadow IT, of making sure that you as an IT operations organization or security organization really understand what is being used in your business today. And again, simplifying the whole process so that users are encouraged to use that platform, to use that access request process and increase security overall, and really meet the needs of the business in terms of compliance and security with a minimal amount of pain. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Amar Rama, and he is going to walk through a really quick demo that's going to talk about all of the stuff that I just mentioned.
Well, thanks, Jen. Following up with what Jen said, I want to show you the actual product, I want to show you how it works, and I want to make sure that we make this real so you walk away with a good understanding of what access request is. So this is just a quick preview of here's what I'm going to be demoing. Right? I want to start by what I would call vanilla access request, right? I'm going to give you a scenario where I just say, hey, here's what the simple access request is, and you might find that a lot of companies do this. But where SailPoint stands apart is one, in our pedigree and our knowledge and ability of how this could get complicated pretty fast. So we don't stop with the simple scenarios. Right, so I'll show you the simple one. Now I'll kind of gently take us into some of the demo scenario where I show you how it can get more complicated. And this is important because I like the phrase Jen used, users are like a river that flows around a stone. The last thing we want is IT to be a stone. We want you to be super valuable, but you need a product that can meet your needs as the needs change because your users' needs are changing. So we'll go from simple to complex. And then I'll also maybe even demonstrate the power of access requests. It's not necessarily limited to just well-defined applications. There's a lot of creativity and imagination that can be applied to solve a variety of business problems. And then I'll touch on some of the back-end stuff. This is what adds fuel. This is the heart of the kind of sophistication. But I want to get there once you've seen the product in action, and then we'll go back to Jen and we'll wrap up with a roadmap. So with that in mind, so let me start by showing you the simple access request. So I'm logged in as myself, and this is SailPoint, right? We eat our own dog food, but I intentionally set us up so you understand the simple scenario. We use a product called Smartsheet, which is a cloud-based project management software. And if you go, this is my Launchpad in Identity Now. And most of you are aware, but just as a gut check, as if you, it's for people who don't know, Identity Now is the industry's leading IGA as a service product. We offer provisioning, certification, access requests, password management, and as far as based on what we see in the market, we're the only product that does it truly in a SaaS fashion, fully elastic, microservices based. So this is my Identity Now Launchpad, and if you look here, I don't have Smartsheets. Okay. So let's figure out how hard it is, right? So this is access request in action, the simplest way. So I go in. It looks like SailPoint ID has set up Smartsheet as something I can request. So I requested, it tells me it's pending, and it's pretty elegant because now I come back, and I'll show you what here in a minute, but Smartsheet was set up to not necessarily require any approval. This is the plain access request scenario, so here you go. Now it shows up on my Launchpad. I didn't have it, I requested it, it didn't require manual intervention, and it's available, and it actually works, right? So you can click on it, it does a SAML Federation login, and it logs me into Armor's SailPoint Smartsheet account. And I'm going to blame this on Smartsheet. Anyway, but you get the idea. So this is the simple request, right? So we got that out of the way. Now we're not the only people to do that. But I wanted to start with that so you get a baseline and a reference. So now let's go to maybe a little more involved scenarios. Right, so now let's go into a scenario where I am logged in as a user for a customer. Let's say I'm Henry Root. And as you can see, Henry turns out has some basic stuff to do his job. And Henry decides, well, I clearly have more to do, and today I need access to AWS. Well, Henry just doesn't need access to AWS, and as you can see, AWS starts with an A, so Henry can find it right there. But this can be busy, so Henry can also search, right? So we autocomplete, we narrow it down. So Henry, there's no discoverability problem here. So Henry can quickly say what he's looking for, and we'll find it for him. But now it gets a little more interesting because what you find is not only can Henry come and request AWS, but I just picked two. As a customer, your IT team has a lot of power, right? You can create multiple tiers of access. You can slice and dice how AWS manages entitlements or IAM resources, and then make them what you want them to be. So Henry can say, hey, I want the cloud infrastructure team end user base level account. Great, so I'm going to go ahead and request it. And then Henry can say, okay, so that's what I want, and I'm going to submit that request. So now what happens is it says pending here because we know Henry has requested it. There is a self-service option, so it would be not a healthy but a sad irony if our self-service product results in more calls to the help center. So that's why we have a My Request portal, so Henry understands what's the status of his request and what's going on here. But let's say now Henry has made the request. So now it might be one or two people I'll show you here. So now we come here and say, there is a person, right? So in this case, it was Andrew Beck, who I've already logged in as. And as you can see, now Andrew gets a prompt. Andrew also actually gets an email, but I was already logged in as Andrew, so I short-circuited it. Andrew is told, Henry just requested access to this kind of account, this entitlement on AWS, and your IT department has picked you, Andrew, as someone who is in charge of making this decision, and do you want to give him thumbs up or thumbs down? Now what's interesting here is this shows the power that IT department has. Andrew doesn't have to be in IT. Andrew could be a business owner anywhere in the company who understands the significance of an AWS account. So this lets IT scale without having to compromise compliance and security by co-opting the right people in the company, but in a right way, so as to not necessarily say, not the wrong people should be making the decision. At audit time, you still want to defend it. So let's say here, Andrew says, yep, good to go. So Andrew makes a call for Henry. So the one thing you'll notice is immediately there's an audit trail here. This goes into the list of completed activities by Andrew, and it says some basic information on, and you'll also find this in an audit report, but this is what we capture. Right? What was requested, by who, when was it requested, and what action was made by who. So this is a simple scenario. So now if I come back to Henry, a lot of refresh, but let's kind of spur it along. Henry comes here. Oh, great. So the My Request tab for Henry updated to say his AWS account was approved. And I think depending on the fulfillment and the provisioning step, we might find that he either already has it or it might show up, right? Because it's been approved from an access request perspective. If you use a provisioning product, you can automate some of this. And then based on how it's fulfilled, it'll automatically show up on Henry's launchpad. So that's one simple scenario. So we went from access request without needing approval to access request where you understand how IT can work with business to accelerate. But now let's go to more interesting scenarios. And I want to use this scenario as an example to show you how we continuously add value to access requests. So this was something that launched 2 weeks back because we didn't have this previously. So let me look at an engineering email alias. So this example I want to use to showcase a few different things. Number one, you're seeing that access request doesn't have to be to apps like Dropbox, Box, Evernote, or AWS. You can wrap direct entitlements in AD with a very business-friendly name and description. In this case, someone can request access to a mailing list. And so this shows you the power and the flexibility you have. So let's say I look at this, and you can have many. I've picked a couple here. Let's say I want access to the on-site engineering mailing list. So the product lets the IT admin actually say, great, but if someone's going to ask access to specific things, I want to force that person to tell me why. So if you notice, this one doesn't, but this one does. And that just shows you that it's flexible and available because I plan on being on-site for the next 3 months. You can come up with some reason, you save the comment, so it's in here, and then now you submit the request. Great. And so this is another flow, right? Same thing, we're familiar with this. You see how the request was made, it shows that you added a comment, and in this case, I know who it is, so if I come out of Andrew Beck and I sign in as Craig Hard, one of these days I'm going to forget these names, and it's going to get interesting. Okay, so now I come in as Craig Hart. You notice Craig has a request because the system was set up to say, hey, Craig's the one who should be making calls on should someone be added to a mailing list. So Craig sees the request from Henry, and Craig also has the additional context. Henry explains why he needs it. Now Craig can choose to approve, but Craig can also choose to deny, saying, Henry, right as wrong DL. I suggest you look for a DL named, ATX onsite. So this is another example of, you're not just saying, oh, I'm sorry, you're denied. No, you're saying, this is like, all of you have experience with expense reports, right? My expense reports, I get this a lot. They love me here on the expense team, and they'll say, oh, hey, great job, nice job filing it. You picked the wrong code again. And so it makes a big difference when you educate them so it doesn't turn into another trouble ticket. This is accelerate self-service. So now you can actually add a comment and explain, and then so this is now actually denied. Right? And we went through an approval, now we're going through a denial. And so now if you come in, and if you are Henry, and if you notice, I go to my request, it actually says, I'm sorry, Henry, your request was denied, and here is why it was denied. And the takeaway here I want people to understand is, one, I want you to all understand there's a lot of power limited just by our imagination on how we can use this capability, and two, we continue to add new features. This is an example of something that was not there in the product even 2 months back. It just showed up in the last month. And I want to wrap our demo because I barely scratched the surface, but I hope I've made it interesting enough for you to understand the various ways this adds value to your business needs. So IT becomes an ally for business and not viewed as someone who's in the way of business. So I want to wrap up by touching on the power. We really haven't focused on this a lot. So before I finish this off and then turn it back to Jen to kind of give you some time for Q&A and show you what else is coming, I want to show you the power behind the curtains here to show you how I'm doing all these capabilities. So I'm logging in as an identity now admin, in this case Andrew again. And what you'll notice here is if I go into the admin section and we make KBA, we choose KBA, but we make a multi-factor authentication mandatory because we don't want anybody to be able to, you can't even turn this off, right? All admins have to have some kind of MFA. So what you'll find out is these wrappers of entitlements called access profiles, these contain a ton of our power and how you see it. So if I look at some of these access profiles, right? So this was something we requested. So if you look at how I've set it up, this one says, right now, this is what you saw us go through. Andrew approved it. Henry requested it. And what this one says is, I just want the person who owns the source to make sure that they're okay with someone getting this access. In this case, the source was titled AWS by us. The owner is Andrew. And we said he's the guy in the workflow. That's why you saw Andrew get this on his queue to approve, and Henry requested it. What I want to show is you can say no approval. This was the Smartsheet example. You can add multiple approvers. You can reorder them once you add them. So you'll notice now if you add it, there's a way to move them around. All of this turns into a tremendous amount of out-of-the-box, no need to write code, flexibility in creating workflows. And then you can also turn on or off which access requests will enforce comments, which one will not enforce comments. So there's a lot of power. And each of these can have as many entitlements as you want, and you can turn them into what your business needs to accelerate governance without compromising security. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jen, maybe touch on the roadmap and hopefully add some clarity to your questions. I'm seeing some interesting questions and I'm excited to handle them.
All right, so we're going to go back to the roadmap here. I think Amar just did a great demo of what we're offering. Because Access Request is a service offering through Identity Now, it is constantly updated. We release updates to this at weekly, and I'm going to have Amar just talk through some of these items on the roadmap.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So what you saw was, there should be no, hopefully no disconnect. All the items on the left, that's got the check against them. I hopefully touched on all, if not most of them, as you walk through those few simple scenarios. Self-service was demonstrated. Automated or native manual fulfillment is how you use our provisioning capability alongside access requests. The 60 plus number continues to grow. That's just a combinatorial as you see the different ways we can create workflows out of the box. Self-service request tracking is the ability to use the My Request tab, and we're going to add more there. I'll show you that. We've got reports. I didn't even touch on those. And I think one of those questions touches on it. So today we have the ability to do reassignment and delegation. This is triggered based on rules that can be configured at a fairly global level. But that was just our first pass, right? This is a classic SaaS philosophy. We get something out there, get it good enough to meet the base use case, the broad use case, and then we'll start refining it and tunneling in. So you'll see me touch on that as I go to the second, to the right of the screen with the bullets, not the checks. But we support reassign delegation the product today. And then comments was the last one on the check. You saw me just show that that was one of the newest features. And so it's fair for you to ask, hey, that's great, what you've done. Tell me what's coming next. What are you doing for me tomorrow? Which is what I expect my customers to ask me. So what's coming here, and this goes to some of the questions. What if Andrew's out of town? Can you have more than one person and more than one reviewer, approver? Absolutely. Right. So we have reassigned delegation for a course train, but if you notice, the first bullet point on my backlog that we're working on is managing request routines. Business continuity is a big key value for us. If you have a team of people, but especially if you have large enterprise systems, we understand this. EBS, AD, Salesforce, SAP, of course, you're not going to have just one person own all the entitlements. You're going to have a team of people, and that's one of the things we're working on. So we're letting you create a team of people and include them in the workflow just using the point-and-click UI you saw me demonstrate. And now you've got built-in redundancy and business continuity. Your team can be spread across the country, so you have coverage across time zones. And even if one person is not there, somebody else picks up the slack. And of course, that also complements reassignment and delegation. But we have a very aggressive and exciting roadmap. And the question also is how we solve it. So that's not the only thing we're working on. So if you look at my roadmap, the next few things I'm working on are, we understand the power of access profiles, but we also understand the additional friction they add. And again, going back to the SaaS philosophy, we started with that because we started with the end user use case initially. And the end users are not people you want to understand things like T-codes and permission sets. End users are people like people who work on a marketing team. They think of Dropbox and Evernote. They don't want to understand the Google Goog. But they're not the only people. You have power users, you have advanced users, and we don't want to leave them behind. And that's what the second bullet focus on. So we want your power users who know exactly what they're working for, and they know exactly what SAP entitlement or Salesforce they want. We want them to be able to get that. We are the product using your compliance rules without having to be compromised. And then beyond that, we're going to be adding stuff that we all know is needed. So today we support apps, app level. We're going to let requesting roles, the business level roles. And then we'll fast follow with a manager being able to, so I went through this. And I just added a new person to my team, and I had to make sure he got both a new monitor and a couple different licenses. And it was good, but we went through a lot of trouble ticket. It would have been great if I could have just click, click, click. Hey, so-and-so Liam is starting. Let me get these things for Liam. So those are things, so there's more exciting stuff out there, but I wanted to just maybe spend a couple minutes getting into the detail on the top things we're working on. Feedback, input is absolutely welcome. That's how we build a SaaS product. This is a great opportunity to influence our thinking and our vision. So if any of this is valuable to your business needs, don't hesitate. Right? Reach out to any of us.
And then it looks like we have a couple of questions on the screen. I think, Amar, you actually addressed some of, at least one of them. So let's go. We're going to go through the questions right now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so the first question, are there email notifications when a request is created, status changed, etc.?
Great, absolutely. So I didn't show that because I had my demo propped up, but yes, all the key workflow events and lifecycle change events along an access request triggers emails today. So that is happening today. And one of the more exciting things is as we flesh out a cross-company detail at the SailPoint level, you'll also notice that we will be embracing more of mobile notifications and push notifications to even accelerate some of these. But the quick answer is yes, this is the product today, but we'll continue to even make it easier.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next question. What about a custom approver, the site source, app, etc.?
Thanks for asking. A great opportunity for me to point out that the way we are building our SaaS platform is there's going to be a lot of flexibility. So if I go back what I was talking 5 minutes back, how I'm doing the team of people approving, let's call it a governance group is how we're calling it internally. Who goes into a governance group is no longer limited by a source owner or an app owner. So by giving you the ability to pull in governance groups, embedding them in the workflow, I'm implicitly also giving you the ability to also create custom approvers or whoever you need, but do it in a structured fashion. And this is a great example of why you also need our partners, because we're still at the end of the day an enterprise product company. And as our partners come up to speed on our product, they can connect the dots between your business need and figuring out how to use our features to create a solution.
Great. Okay, next question. Do I need to have implemented the provisioning service to take advantage for access request?
Yeah, once in a while I do get that. The short answer is no, you absolutely don't have to. And it's good to realize that these complement each other really well. If you already have provisioning, going back to Jen's slides, if you recall, that is a well understood problem. You're kind of picking up the value of automating onboarding, offboarding, big lifecycle events. But if you don't have provisioning, you can absolutely start with access request. And the key here to realize is access request brings the fulfillment layer with it. You don't have to buy provisioning to get SailPoint's industry-leading connectivity tool. You get it with access request, and you can add provisioning anytime you want.
Great, right. All right, and so with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And I just wanted to let everybody know on the phone, if you are interested in our access request product, we do have information available on it, and you can also work with your CSM, contact them, and they'll do just a quick assessment on what your needs are and if this will be really valuable to you.
Excellent. Everyone, thank you for joining today. Keep an eye out for an email from us tomorrow that will include a recording of today's webinar, as well as a brief that takes a deeper dive into the access request service. Jennifer, Amar, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Shay.
Everyone, have a good rest of your day.